I'm tired and I should be sleeping. I probably should just call it a morning and go away. But we cannot let the night shift weekend come to an end without talking about this little thing that popped up with Windows 11, especially since that derailed nearly all of my plans for the weekend. So I just chose to relax because we did a lot of running around last weekend. And yeah, so I've been playing a lot of ESO, and I found out that with the console enhanced launch, there's now a maximum graphics setting and a minimum graphics setting. It's kind of cool to see the range of graphics in ESO nowadays, as well as the performance improvements that Elder Scrolls Online now has in it, and also the visual fidelity is amazing compared to what it was before. So if you have a system that's around Pascal or newer in terms of the graphics card, you can actually hit maximum, and in my case, I'm doing 1080-60 on... at 1080p, I'm doing 1080-60 just fine. I would not be able to do 4K with this setup, though, which gets you thinking about hardware upgrades. So the move to 4K is probably going to bring a lot of other hardware upgrades with it. So let the monolith system as it is ride into the sunset as it is. What is up, everybody? This is Jay, aka MultimediaJay. And it's, we have some stuff to talk about. Let's play catch up on the stuff we didn't talk about last time, because the discussion we had last time was about the pandemic. So for the new folks that have subbed to the YouTube channel, Lee, thank you for the sub. See, Sullyman, thank you for the sub. And a more vintage username, a name with some numbers. Hello, Lover Girl. Assuming that's not a spam account. Thank you for the YouTube sub. And I only crack jokes like that because if you know what's going on with spamming right now on YouTube, you'll get the joke just like that. I have these same problems on Twitter as well. People follow me and then unfollow me on Twitter, and it's really just somebody trying to, spam, like, check out my cam, whatever, and then, that they get banned a couple of days later, and, and the cycle begins anew. Let's get some music going with some of that Stream Beats synthwave. It's still loaded in the Winamp, and it's still gonna work, right? Yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah, it looks like it'll work. What are the levels gonna be at? Yeah, we can't minimize it when it's playing. What are the levels? What are the levels at? Yeah, let's see. Is Ear Trumpet still working? Don't want to get burned by that again. Have a stream where people can't half hear me. So we have some things to talk about when it comes to Windows 11. Try not to say Windows 10 here. It's interesting because Windows 10 was supposed to be the final version of Windows. And if you follow my Twitter over at MultimediaJay. No, that's the blog I'm thinking of. Yeah, twitter.com/MultimediaJay. I made sure to link that article from, I believe it was The Verge. A little tired here. I mentioned that article from The Verge about why Windows 10 is the last version of Windows. And Microsoft, back when Windows 10 was coming out, was talking about how they wanted to go the OS 10 approach with Windows. So Windows 10 would receive largely system updates and things along those lines. Not necessarily like Windows 98, Windows 2000, Windows XP, not necessarily the huge releases. Well, that was basically Microsoft's answer to what E-machines did with the never obsolete computers at the end of the 90s. So this thing's never obsolete. We found a way to make a computer never obsolete. Never listen to a company that claims that its products will not be subject to the silent march of time. Never. It didn't work with E-machines, and it's not working with Microsoft. Windows 10, oh yeah, look, the computing world has changed. The security world has changed. The hardware world has changed. The gaming world has changed. And the interaction between desktop and mobile has changed. Time for a new version of Windows. Makes all the sense in the world, but if it wasn't for the poisoning of the well that was this narrative about Windows 10 being the final version of Windows, if it wasn't for this poisoning the well a couple of years ago, this wouldn't be such an awkward thing to talk about right now. Because, oh yeah, Microsoft releasing a new version of Windows. Who cares? They do that every few years anyways. Well, last time they said would be the last time. I guess it wasn't. So, I know very little about Windows 11 except for some of the killer new features coming in. I haven't gone to the trouble yet of watching the reveal event. And because of that, And the reason why I do that is because I don't want my first impressions of something like this to be shaped by other people's opinions. I want to basically form my opinions based on my own direct observation of that presentation. So I've seen some, now not opinions necessarily, but summaries of it. Like I put one in the blog entry as well. There's a couple of features in Windows 11 that I'm interested in, such as the integration with ARM and moving towards supporting Android natively, similar to BlueStacks, but it's through the Amazon App Store, not the Google Play Store. So there'll be some limitations there. But just Windows evolving and not becoming this outdated thing like it's nearly become so many times as things have changed in the computing world. So it's pretty nice to see a new version of Windows that's addressing what's happened in the last 5 years. There's also, of course, gaming as well, and of course the continuous awkward relationship between Microsoft's having Xbox and PC gaming under its umbrella at the same time. That's something that's never made any sense to me. I mean, it's just like, you know, why doesn't Microsoft just make a version of Windows that can go on an Xbox or something and have the Xbox become what the Steam box couldn't be when Valve was trying to sell Steam machines many years ago? I mean, an Xbox is basically a computer, just with more stuff locked down and more proprietary stuff. So, and heck, the Series X even looks like a gaming PC. Smaller than a gaming PC if you get the actual dimensions of it. The dimensions of it place it closer to a larger Bluetooth speaker or a bookshelf speaker than, say, a gaming PC. But it's a tower, basically, if you stand it up. So it's a tower with a CD thingy in it. So, yeah, I mean, video game consoles have been turning into computers for years. At what point does Microsoft put two and two together and just blend the two ecosystems? That's my question. Instead of these awkward attempts to take some features from Xbox and put them into Windows, or some things from Windows and put them into Xbox, you know, all of this, you know, having a wall between the two ecosystems like this, I just don't understand, especially with the cost of these consoles now. If we're selling $500 consoles, they might as well be computers at this point. I'm sorry. Now, I realize hardware drove up that MSRP even before the shortages. The improved hardware is why it costs $500. But you know what also costs $500? My upgrade to Monolith in the middle of the 2010s. About $500. So, can't remember if that was with or without a Windows license, but I could have cheesed it without one either way. But I just remember Monolith was a $500 upgrade. And that included buying a case. So we could probably cut the case from that estimate and put in the cost of the Windows license to replace some of it and come up with, you know, a final cost that way. If I really want to, I can dig around my Newegg order history. I don't think I'll be getting the next round of computer parts from Newegg, though. I wonder if Newegg's trying to hide the fact that they're trying to hide some kind of struggle they've been having as a business lately. But that's a totally different discussion. I mean, Newegg did, of course, hit that 20 years in business milestone. But with what's going on with all of this, though, you know, all right, let's get some air in here. Turn on the main fan.
Turning the main fan on.
There's some wind here. We got to adjust it a bit so it doesn't blow directly towards the microphone. Oh, good. The speakers didn't respond to that. Good. Yeah, I just don't want wind noise. Not seeing any of it in the meters. Good. Could just do this. Let's see. So I had too much air conditioning earlier and I was feeling like winter in here, so now I think I'm going too far in the other direction. Whatever. So yeah, Microsoft Windows 11. Oh boy, where do we even start with this? I know some of the key features of Windows 11. And I know that there's going to be some improvements with gaming and things along those lines. There's the integration with ARM. There's the App Store and some other things. It sounds interesting. What doesn't sound interesting to me, though, is the hardware floor that they're rolling out with this. There's an element of security. There's an element of security that will appeal to the corporate world. But in the process of appealing to that demographic, Microsoft has hung us out to dry. People like myself and other people who mess around with old computers on YouTube channels. It's really too bad. It's just, I know that enthusiasts are a smaller market than the mainstream when it comes to selling stuff, but it didn't have to be this way. So, Yeah, it's pretty sad. So I looked at the compatible processors. You need an 8000 series Core i or a 3000 series Ryzen in order to run Windows 11. So Monolith cannot run Windows 11. So other than maybe needing some more horsepower when it's time to move up to 4K, there's really no reason for me to get rid of Monolith. It has run incredibly well for the last nearly 5 years. Matter of fact, in August, I have to make a YouTube video about Monolith being a 5-year-old system, and it has worked out very much the way that I would want it to. So, Monolith, with its fractal design case, i7 Skylake, I got made fun of many years ago for using an i7 instead of an i5 because people were like, "Oh, you only need 4 cores to game. What are you doing? You don't need an i5. You only need an i5. Why do you have an i7?" Yeah, well, I knew the Ryzen was coming, and one of the things the Ryzen would do is put multi-core more into the spotlight instead of dual core, quad core, etc. The running joke used to be that Intel couldn't count past 4, and I knew that was going to change when the Ryzen came on the scene. And now here we are. Who's laughing now? You know, started with a GTX Pascal card, and now I've moved up to a 2060, from 1060 to 2060, still sticking with the hippie card that is not too much of a sucker of power, but still adding some performance in there. So I've gone through the multiple graphics cards and things, and at the same time, though, AMD has changed the game when it comes to upgrades moving with you to your next system. Because of the longevity of socket AM4, the processor is back to being a transferable upgrade. Versus before, the processor is back to being a transferable upgrade. Versus before, where the processor would come and go with the motherboard, basically. So you'd have to do what I called a guts upgrade, CPU, motherboard, RAM, in order to move forward with CPUs. Well, thanks to AMD, having sockets actually last for a couple of years is now a thing again. So actual CPU upgrades can be a thing again, and if there's the right BIOS updates on the motherboard, RAM upgrades can actually be transferable now too. So stay the same kind of DDR for a long time, and buy a new processor. That's stuff that conceptually made sense, but was never practical up until recently. We have AMD to thank with socket AM4 for what they've done, but the problem is, we're back to, again, I would probably, if I built a system now, and I'm not going to build a system now, if I built a system now, it would be an Intel system, no questions asked, despite Ryzen's progress. The reason being is because I'm at that awkward moment where we need to see when socket AM5 is going to come on the scene, and we know that with technology is priced via price skimming. So the early adopters of a technology will pay a premium because they're early adopters, and that recoups the R&D costs and things like that. There is no introductory low pricing that goes up later on tech stuff. It's largely a price skimming endeavor where the price will start high and come down. So if I'm waiting until socket AM5 gets out and is out long enough to not be priced at that premium price point for early adopters, we're talking years out at this point versus something Intel 14 nanometer that I could get right now and just skip out on 7 nanometer. So, or get the i5 variant of the Core I's 11 series. Could always get something like that. But it's just the timing of it all. And that's part of the issue with what Microsoft is doing with this whole thing. I mean, Microsoft, with this Windows 11 hardware floor, has basically said all of the computers that I use in my tech videos that I use to see, my curiosities and whatnot, how long can these computers keep going at the 1080p gaming level? I think we know that a Sandy Bridge is probably not your best choice for 4K, even if it's an i7 with 4 cores, 8 threads like what I have. But 1080 is perfectly fine. It might be a little fuzzy on a 4K TV if the screen is big enough. But I think 4K gaming is subject to the same kinds of limitations as 4K movies. at this point where it's very heavily dependent upon your screen size. Yeah, sure, you could probably get something that will run 4K 60 or 4K 120, no problem, but is the screen going to be big enough where you'll notice the difference? Especially if you have a living room setup where you're sitting back with a lapboard away from your TV. And at what point do you have the first seat in the movie theater problem where you are close enough to see the detail, but your screen goes so far past your field of vision that you're like doing this, and you know, it's kind of silly. I sometimes get that. I lose my mouse cursor. I use a 37-inch TV, been using one since 2008. You know, it was expensive in 2008 to get a 1080p TV. But you know how many times I've died in World of Warcraft or something because I lost where the mouse cursor was because it was on a part of the screen that I wasn't looking at and I had to wiggle the mouse to find where the pointer went? So I even have this problem borderline at least a little. So you may have something that can play games in 4K, but now the screen size is in play as to whether it's even worth it or not. So you spend all the time to upgrade your CPU, GPU to support 4K like that on a nice big screen. How big is the screen that you're going to be enjoying everything on? So that's the thing. I don't think Microsoft really understands people like me. I think that's part of the problem. So Microsoft, I don't think really understands people like me. So if you make all of my computers obsolete because of a hardware flaw on Windows 11, you do so artificially. And it's a complete slap in the face to everything that I do. So I want to build a new system when it's actually necessary because of performance issues. And I've been there before. So, and yeah, here we go. Here comes the chat. Yep, go ahead. Everybody, air your grievances. Join the fun. How much do you not like this Windows 11 hardware flaw? Now, go ahead. You know, it'll go into the replay. I don't make spin-off videos of entire streams anymore. So anybody who says, yeah, I've got a computer that'll run this, but you know, I got a recent computer, it's not going to run it, this, da-da-da-da. Yeah, these stories have been coming in on chat, and they've been coming in on comments, they've been coming in on responses to my community posts, but it is, look, not a good first impression. We're back to, remember when the Xbox One was a DRM-crippled Betamax player knockoff? And it was like, supposed to have always on DRM, always required an internet connection. There were like authorization things you had to do in order to let people, in order to buy a used game, or no, not let people borrow your games, excuse me. Remember when Xbox was going to be really locked down? Then Sony made fun of them, and they've done a total about, how about mandatory connects? Yeah, anybody remember that stuff? What is it with Microsoft, you know? Because there's the meme going around that every other version of Windows is crap. So that's selective. It omits Windows 2000. That's what breaks that meme. But Microsoft has a regular problem with this. I was thinking about it after I wrote the blog entry, which is in the description of this video, by the way. Yeah, it's a stream, but it's going to live on as a video afterwards. This is YouTube, not Twitch. So people will actually be able to find the discussion and have a good listen. So here's the thing, though. Let's go back in time. Let's think about this for a second. There's been some comparative worsts among the Windowses. I've talked about like Windows Vista was like a rough draft for Windows 7. Windows 8 was like a rough draft for Windows 10. And now, you know, but the thing is, the OS that sticks around that people don't want to get rid of is usually the one that stunts the growth of its successor. We compared, for example, Windows XP stunted adoption of Vista, Windows 7 stunted adoption of 8, and Windows 10 is now going to stunt adoption of 11 unless Microsoft changes a few things up. So I'd like to get into Windows 11, and I'd like to get into it in the beta even. But if none of my systems can run it, I'm not taking part in any of that stuff. Furthermore, what kind of person does Microsoft think I am? Do I really want to just go and, you know, barrel into Windows 11 on my main system? Even if, let's say, Monolith was compatible, which is nothing else wrong with the computer. I'm running ESO at 1080 60 maximum settings. running great, except for times when the frame rate drops into the 40s, which has been happening for many releases of the game, and I've hardware analyzed it all over the place. I've tried faster storage, I've tried everything. It's a limitation of the engine or something when there's too much going on. Just not as pronounced as it was before. But if I have if I'm going to try out Windows 11 to make sure it's going to work okay and not break all my games, I'm going to do it on a Dellosaurus, which shouldn't be a problem processing-wise, because right now, the difference between Monolith and the Dellosaurus is about one setting of the graphics. So if I'm running on the main system on high mode, it goes back to medium mode on one of those, but it still runs. Even after the processor took a hit because of the microcode updates to fix things like Spectre and Meltdown. Yeah, it took a hit on the processor side of things, but look, does Microsoft... this is a Pandora's box. And it's an anti-consumer Pandora's box. But let's go back a bit. Let's talk about this being a regular problem with Microsoft. So, let's look at the other times that adoption of a new OS has been stunted because of this. Windows 8 was like the rough draft of Windows 10, but again, Windows 7 was perfectly fine. Nobody asked for the OS to become more like mobile with a full screen start menu and stuff. Everybody had just gotten used to 7, the corporate world had just been dragged away from XP, and now suddenly we're changing the UI for 8? So, the start menu coming back in Windows 10 was probably one of the best design, about faces that happened between 8 and 10, instead of always having a tablet-style start menu even when you're not on a tablet. So, yeah, right. But let's keep on going. Windows 2000 into XP. 2000 was an operating system that was business focused. XP was like the solution to everything. So if I had stuff crashing and stuff, my folks and college roommates and suite mates would be like, well, the solution is to get XP. The solution was always get XP because it was more of a general purpose OS instead of being business specific. People scratched their heads at me for trying to play games on Windows 2000. But anyways, the problem at hand here is there's nothing wrong with any of the computers that I use. They've all went from Windows whatever they were, and some of them were Windows 7 and XP machines, and they ran 10. And one of the selling points of 10 was Microsoft wanted Windows to be scalable down to much weaker devices after 7 started getting a little bloated. They tried to take things back in the other direction. So they talked about Windows 10 performing better across multiple types of hardware as kind of a way to strike back at Linux, which has traditionally been an OS that can scale all over the place, depending on the distribution. So now we have, nothing except for 8,000 and up Intel cores and 3,000 up Ryzen's. Yeah, it doesn't go well when Microsoft tries to force people to upgrade hardware. We saw this with Windows 8. PC sales plummeted. But if people have something that is good enough for everything they need it for right now, they're not going to arbitrarily upgrade. They're not going to want to arbitrarily upgrade. And telling us Windows 10 users that we have until 2025 to keep using Windows 10, and then everything will just be, that's it, EOL. I mean, can we remember what happened with XP? You need to give people a reason to move on, or offer a product that lets them move on before they'll actually move on. That's the lesson that Microsoft keeps needing to learn over and over and over again. Yeah, so right now, Windows 10, perfectly fine. Windows 11 has some cool new features, but what's the point if it's going to be this elitist snob job of an OS? Yeah, what's the point if, it's going to try and strong-arm you into upgrading hardware? Let's go back to Windows 7 to Windows 8, the prototype for Windows 10 as far as I'm concerned. And then, of course, they need Windows 8.1 when they tried to fix stuff, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, Windows 10. Yeah, Windows 7 to Windows 8. Windows 7, perfectly fine. It was a little bloated because Windows kept getting bigger and bigger, especially when Aero launched and things like that. It was basically the polished up version of Vista. But people got used to it and they liked it, and it did what they found a way to make it do what they needed it to do. And so they got all that. You know, why would they want to change to a tablet-inspired operating system when they weren't using a tablet? Let's go back to Windows XP. Chris Pirillo. I posted the clip of Chris Pirillo, that live stream he did in 2012, where he was like, stop using XP, because it was a really big problem. Matter of fact, XP kept running on ATMs until the embedded version went EOL. Hopefully it got replaced by then. But XP was another tough nut to crack as well, because you could have an XP computer that was perfectly fine for what you want to do with it. So I think the issue was 64-bit support meant that there was a limit on the RAM you could have in your XP system. So, you know, Windows XP for the most part was 32-bit. It was a special thing if you bought the 64-bit edition. So you basically were RAM capped. Today, you know, I actually have the Silver Bullet over there with my old 2005 system in it. I'm thinking of maxing the RAM for XP and making that into an XP nostalgia system. Don't have it on the network or anything. Maybe even run it off a mechanical drive and put all my old 2000s era CD games on it and play Morrowind on it or something. You just get that retro experience, and then, well, nowadays retro, and then just marvel at how far things have come since then, especially with the advent of SSDs. Even serial ATA SSDs. But in its day, Windows XP was the good enough OS. So then, even when XP was taken off, that people, it's easy to forget, but people were nervous about the online activation for Windows XP. So Windows 2000 was some people's good enough OS because it was based on the NT core, so it didn't crash under regular use like all the DOS-based stuff from 95 to ME. So the DOS era ones that crashed for no reason, that they were what they were in the 90s. But when Windows 95 came out, there were numerous people, and PCs were way more of a major investment back then. Things cost a lot more in 90s money than they do now. Even now. But there was an ongoing issue. Windows 95 is trying to get you to buy a new computer in order to run it. So all these people with like 286s, 386s, 486s were upset. I got this gaming PC, I got this PC I do my taxes on, and it's not good enough for the brand new Windows. So, yeah. It's the world we live in, folks. Microsoft has had a bit of a problem with getting a little too power hungry every so often. Look at the IE versus Netscape thing for a good historical example of that. But here we are again. Windows 10 perfectly good enough. Windows 10 perfectly good enough for much of what people need it for nowadays. But people might be curious about Windows 11. But they'd better have hardware that's within the last, few years or so in order to upgrade. I think that Microsoft will probably change something with the backlash and stuff. They have to at this point. They don't want to situate. I mean, they've been through this before. When Windows Vista was getting panned right after it launched, one of the reasons why is because of the hardware requirements as well as what was available at the time. And Windows Vista was actually experimenting with some new technology that people didn't know they needed or whatever, like hybrid hard drives, the ancestor of SSDs. So hybrid hard drives to try and make things faster with a little bit of flash memory inside the hard drive. And then of course there was Ready Boost, where you plugged in a USB thumbstick and we used that as a primitive SSD for certain things, but still run the system off of a hard drive. So there's a lot of new things that Vista was trying to do, but people didn't see the need for it yet because they already were fine with what they had with XP. So then we got into the whole downgrading thing and the extended support and the licensing and all this other stuff like that. So downgrades back to XP, etc. The downgrade service, and actually, even the 9to-5ers. They bought Windows 7 era computers, but the company had all the images on XP still, so they all get downgraded back to XP until the end of support date was approaching, and then they were upgraded to Windows 7. Because there's a lot of costs involved at the corporate level when your computers are basically appliances and you're talking about businessy stuff like cost structures, cost of downtime, all that analyst type stuff that you use for making purchasing decisions. It's not like what people like me, what I do, where you have a project system that you tinker with, and if you break it, oh well, and if it doesn't work, oh well, it's not your main system anyways. So, and that's what I think some of these security requirements that are part of the reason why the hardware floor exists. I think some of these security requirements are probably a corporate thing. We live in a day and age of scammers and people doing all kinds of wild exploits to steal data, steal company data, customer data. And if some of that data gets stolen, depending on where you're doing business, that could be protected by law. So you can get fined, by the state government or something, like the California privacy law and things like that. So you accidentally, well, not even accidentally, but you have security that's not up to snuff on some system somewhere and someone steals the data and you basically leaked people's private information like that. Yeah, the state could come after you with fines and all kinds of other enforcements because of that. So as the world continues to evolve, what the baggage in these Windows versions is going to be understandable. There should be like some kind of warning or something. Yeah, I know it's one way in corporate America. But if you're like me, you just have a project system that you're tinkering with because you want to see, for example, how long does a Sandy Bridge stay relevant in gaming? What finally breaks the Sandy Bridge i7? Or what's the oldest, cheapest processor that I can toy with? What's the oldest, cheapest processor that I can toy with? There's a little bit of Newegg in my neutral browser here. What's the oldest, cheapest processor that I can toy with in order to get into Windows, in order to get into PC gaming? I mean, PCs are known for outlasting console generations. As I've seen, we got the Sandy Bridge over there, and I'm actually in the process of working on some network upgrades for around here so that I'm not using wireless as much. So when that's up to speed, then we can probably do a lot more experimenting with switches and access points and things like that for stuff. But ooh, there we go. Oh, look at this. Yeah, so I'm looking at a Delosaurus right now, which should surprise absolutely no one. Core i7 2600, 16 gig DDR3, 256 gig SSD with Windows 10 Pro and Wi-Fi. Probably has a little USB nub plugged into the box. So, checking some things in chat too. Yeah, my sentiments exactly. This is artificial obsolescence, and there's no reason why computers like these should be relegated to the junkyards. There's no reason why we need to take something that still can do something and send it off to the e-waste pile when the world has enough of a problem with e-waste as it is. People get rid of stuff, including computers, for the dumbest of reasons. Now, why in this day and age of everything having a dark mode does Newegg not have one yet? It is lighting me up all over the place. But yeah, here's the thing. The chip shortage and everything that's going on right now, and how hard it is to find semiconductors because of the shortages. Refurbished i7 Delosaurus, Sandy Bridge era, $256 from Discount Computer Depot if you buy it through Newegg. Most customers receive within 5 to 7 days. 16 gigs of RAM, DDR3 of course, but you could up that a bit. And of course you need a graphics card that is that isn't one of those big ones. You need a smaller graphics card to get it to work. And the power supply would have to be upgraded because it's going to be a stock power supply. Unless you want to be stuck with a 1050 Ti and running that into the ground, which will be 1080p. Why do you need something that can run Windows 11 to game at that level if that's what you're stuck with because of the hardware shortages? Yeah, $256 to give you a baseline, and then you'll spend whatever for the graphics card, or if you have a graphics card, you just plug it in. Or if you might need a power supply too, depending on what it is, to wire everything up so it's all powered properly. But yeah, sub $300 for a Delosaurus now. And that's the thing. You want to get into PC gaming on the cheap, a Delosaurus might be your best bet while everything is sky high. So yeah, it's like you got all the shortages going on and Microsoft's trying to pull this. Are they even paying attention to what's going on with hardware? even builders like myself. So yeah, Monolith 2. You could call it that, but I'm going to call it Monolith either way. My main system is always going to be called Monolith, and I'm going to rename the old system when I retire it. So maybe like 2010's Monolith or Monolith 2016 or something like that, or OG Monolith or something like that. But I do have plans for a new system. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever to build it right now because of all the shortages. There will be a Define 7XL for the case, because I like big cases, and I'll be looking for a motherboard with lots of M2 support, as well as lots of ways to utilize my growing SSD collection for storage. So it's like, the problem I have is the SSDs don't conk out, so I've actually grown a collection of them lately. If I start running out of places to put them all, I'm going to end up with having to make plug-in drives out of them. And there are enclosures that can do that if I want to do it through USB 3, 3.1, etc. So I do have those options available. I do have plans to build another computer, but it doesn't make any sense to do anything right now because of all the shortages. And here comes Microsoft. Haha, yeah, you need to upgrade your hardware if it's not relatively recent, and we have already given you the deadline when we're ending support for Windows 10. Yeah, no, that is artificial obsolescence, and I don't support it. Not a smart idea. And not only are we talking about making people upgrade hardware that they might not need to upgrade depending on what kind of games they're playing when it comes to PC gaming. Not only are we talking about that, but we're also talking about a situation here where Microsoft doesn't seem to get what's going on. Oh. Yeah, it's how much is it going to cost to build a compliant system? How much are you going to get ripped off? With the shortages going on right now, you can take your graphics card with you, so that'll be a transferable upgrade. So if you have a gaming PC right now and you want to upgrade to Windows 11, so that means you're on the hook for motherboard, RAM, processor. Unless you have a Ryzen board with a Ryzen that's too old and you can go up to like 3rd gen Ryzen. What's that going to cost you? So for on the Ryzen side of things, which by the way, AMD has not been doing as good as they make it sound in terms of taking away market share from Intel. Intel, man, they're boat anchored in there. Despite all the problems with manufacturing, the Steam hardware survey still shows the extreme majority of gaming PCs are still Intel. AMD's been making progress, and they've been eating away at the market share. So it's closer to like 70-30 and stuff than, say, what it was before. But I'm just, after all these years of Ryzen, that's the market share they've clawed back. Yeah, well, that's what enthusiast products tend to do. I look for stuff that's more refined. So let's see. Windows 11 already reminds me of Vista. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel, so the blog entry, the points in the blog entry will stay as is. So listening to this discussion is not a replacement for checking out the blog entry. MultimediaJay.wordpress.com. Link is in the description. Now, let's see here. If I wanted to, let's go back to... no, let's go into the neutral browser. Let's go into the neutral browser, fire up Microsoft Edge, and I'm getting this nice preview of Windows 11's wallpaper every time I open it. Newegg. If I wanted to pick up a Ryzen 7 3700X, Ryzen 7 3700X, because that will get me in the door for Windows 11 compatibility if I can find a motherboard that supports the security stuff. It's a $300 processor, which is roughly what I paid for my i7. One of the reasons I haven't upgraded was there's a bundle for $400 that actually also includes a 1 terabyte SSD. Well, the processor by itself, cool. But then again, it's a $300 processor and SSDs around the $100 mark for a terabyte anyway, so how is this a deal? Significant digits. It's like it's like back in the day when I risked customer service issues to buy from whatever the cheapest vendor was on pricewatch.com way back when, before I settled on Newegg being a standard. Now, of course, Amazon has some decent stuff nowadays. But yeah, a Ryzen 7 3700X pre-built gaming PC is $2,300. I mean, these are 90s computer prices here. Where will you get socked? The motherboards? Okay, $300 for a Ryzen 7 3700X is about what I would expect to pay for and whatnot, but let's see. Let's find a motherboard. will I get socked on the motherboard because of the semiconductor shortage? Because I would have to get RAM and a case and all kinds of other stuff too, so... See here. Dominant gaming and streaming unlocked. Yeah, well... Let me double check the 6700K versus 3700X. The minimum for getting into that kind of stuff. CPU user benchmark. This... Yeah, we're talking about a 5% improvement. A 5% improvement for the Ryzen. So, that's the thing. That's the thing. I believe in emphasizing the processor, but when you build a gaming PC, against the wisdom of people telling you that it's only the graphics card that matters, because maybe in today's world where you'll get something like socket AM4 that makes CPU upgrades a possibility again, but in today's world, you don't want to be constantly swapping. Why swap out many components when you could only swap out the graphics card because the processor retains its punch for years after the fact? It's one of the key reasons, too, when I got into the Delosaurus thing, I went in i7 instead of i5. I didn't do a total copy of what Greenham Gaming did with this Core i5 system, because I figured with Ryzen on the horizon, I figured with Ryzen on the horizon that multi-core gaming would be more of a thing, and support for multiple threads would be more emphasized in years to come. Hey, what do you know? Look what happened. Yeah, so, see here. If I wanted to get a motherboard here, Newegg hamburger menu, motherboards for AMD. What are we looking at for that? If I want it to be able to support socket AM4, 1,000 plus, obviously. So what are we looking at for prices here? Micro ATX for $219, $160 for the MSI Mag B550 board. The Tomahawk, at least it has 4 things of RAM and stuff. How many? Yeah, 6 things for serial ATA. How many M2s? See, I think, yeah, Gen 4 M2s under one of them, and there's another M2 towards, or is that a heatsink? I don't know. Yeah, so I think it could work. I think it could work. So you're talking $400 as is. The problem is I'd want to buy a case, then we have to buy RAM. Been multiple antitrust things with RAM lately. DDR4, 32 gig kit. What do those go for these days? 32 GB kit. So G-Skill, G-Skill Ripjaws, 16 gig times 2, $160. Yeah, $80 and stuff like that. That's not too bad. I think maybe it might be the graphics card. Tomahawk is good. Yeah, well, Tomahawk is good. Yeah, well, that's the thing. I have an SSD collection, so one of the things I want to do is I want to move as many SSDs into the main system as possible so I can use them until they quit without having to make them into plug-in drives and put a lot of load on the USB system for stuff like that. So you're talking about take a bunch of old SSDs and put games on them and stuff. You run the main system off of an M2 and then get like 600 megs, 600 whatever it is for the maximum for serial ATA, things like that. 64 gigs, that's for $330. So yeah, but there's been multiple antitrust things with RAM manufacturers, so there's times when memory prices tend to creep up and stuff. All right, how about the graphics cards then? RTX 3060. That's probably all out of stock, right? Oh, I'm only fighting pre-builts. Please only show me the graphics cards. Out of stock, out of stock, out of stock, out of stock. Okay, dude. Okay, that must be where the ripoffs are. Oh, there's a 12 out of stock. Never mind. Out of stock, 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 out of stock. No RTX 3060 for me. Boo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo. How about 2060s? RTX 2060. I'll probably get sent back to the 1060 if this thing cooks. $600 for 2060. No thanks. That's double what I got mine for. Probably more so, actually. Yeah, gouge. Unacceptable, unacceptable, unacceptable. No. Discussion over. So that's where you get ripped. That's where you get ripped off. So yeah, you want to do most of your hunting and trying to find bargains for a graphics card, or you want to move up to Windows. So I guess if you have a graphics card that you can already play everything, moving up to Windows 11 isn't too expensive. But in my case, though, what's the going rate for a Define 7 XL, which would be the case that I would want. So we're talking hundreds of dollars, probably the better part of $1,000 just to build this thing. Yeah, Define 7 XL, brushed aluminum, E8, E-ATX with all kinds of room for stuff. I like having a big, huge computer in today's day and age. $229. Yeah, so $200 just for the case, but it is a huge enthusiast case. So, I could put it on screen if I really wanted to, but it's Newegg. Most of you folks that are listening to this should pretty much know what Newegg looks like by now. Might as well. So I suppose I could. I suppose I could if I really wanted to. The thing is, though, there'd be so much stuff going over from my current system to the new one that I don't know if the old system would stay functional or not. No. We take the M2 SSD, we take the graphics card, so now we got a graphics card thing that won't go into a project system properly. Then figure out what to do with the old system. I don't know. But at the same time, though, if I'm going to be testing out a new operating system, it's not going to be on my main system. I want to see how it works on maybe a secondary system. And I want the ability to have secondary systems. So let's say, we reach the end of life date for Windows 10. Let's suppose we reach the end of life date for Windows 10. I don't want to be knocked back to a system that's not getting security updates if, say, something breaks and I can't run the computer for a bit. So it's just artificial obsolescence. Artificial obsolescence is not something people like me like, and it's not just a slap in the face because, haha, your computer's old, which I've been joking about the silent aging of technology, saying, yeah, Monolith this year is a 5-year-old system. But I wouldn't know it. Runs perfectly fine. The best engineered system I've ever had. And the only reason I'm thinking of upgrading it is because processors have moved on. But the big reason why I'm talking build instead of upgrade is because Fractal Design finally closed this gap in their product catalog with the Define 7 XL. I wanted a Define R5 XL version. There were a couple of upgrades to the Define R5 from the previous extra large case that Fractal made. One of them being that you could pull the dust filters all out of the front. The old case, you had to go around the back and pull the bottom dust filter out of the back in order to clean out the dust filters. So what I wanted was a system where I could clean all the dust filters without actually having to move the system. Because given my setup that it's between desks and shelves and stuff like that, I might pull the thing out just to, see how everything's going inside the case. But by and large, it's been pretty darn solid. My previous system, Tuxedo, too. Phenom 2 1090T until I flaked out the motherboard with too much overclocking. Whoops. And now rolling with the what was it? AMD FX 80 something or another. It was the hippie chip. So that came out. The last attempt at power efficiency. No AMD FX chip is worth it anymore. There are low-level Ryzens that'll do the job, at least until Windows 11 won't run those chips. Yeah, so that's the thing. I mean, you basically are like, oh yeah, well now you got to run an obsolete OS synthetically, completely artificially, because of some whim at Microsoft. Okay, so maybe they're concerned about security. If you're just building a system to run games on, then it just needs to run the games. That's all that matters to you. Whether or not there is a hardware level thing that keeps the encryption in check on things and prevents certain kinds of exploits is probably not going to matter, especially if you're just using the system for YouTube videos. And by the way, while Microsoft is thinking that we all use our computers for everything, whoops, has Microsoft forgotten about phones? You might have a lot of people out there nowadays that do all their general computing stuff on a phone they keep up to date. Like their mobile banking or paying bills or something. And the computer is literally just for games. Yeah. Mobile has been eating into the viability. Mobile has been eating into the viability of computers for how long? Ooh, some dents. Yeah, so has Microsoft forgotten about these things? I mean, think about, for example, the Chromecast and stuff like that, and all these things that work with your phone to smarten up things like an old TV or something. Use a phone as a remote and stuff to play stuff through a Chromecast. a lot of what we use TV for, or a lot of what we use a computer for non-gaming stuff, can be done by phones too, or some kind of low-power device that renders the old HTPCs obsolete, except as Blu-ray players and, you know, PC in the living room. That's a different form factor. Could use it as a DVR as well. There's a lot you can do with phones, though. So what's to say somebody may not just be out paying their bills or something on their phone, doing all the really sensitive stuff on their phone, and then the computer is just a gaming device. That's really the issue here. And how about if you're gaming in 1080p for whatever reason, 1440 even? How much CPU do you need for that? Most of the CPU robustness today goes towards something like what I'm doing right now, streaming. Or the kind of setup I usually have where I have two screens now because I stream. So I'll have something playing maybe on screen 2 while I'm doing something in a game full screen on screen 1. So the ability to multitask is more important than before, but it's not the end of the world. So I believe I upgraded the quality on this thing as high as it'll go for the stream settings. Just double check that. Yeah, it's set for max quality. And what are we doing for CPU? 4% from OBS? Ooh. And that's with an i7 6700K. So yeah. And of course, ESO running at max. Not a problem with that either, except in towns and stuff like that. So what do you need the hardware for, other than to make Microsoft happy? No, seriously. Anybody, would anybody care to guess? Or maybe it's all quiet in the chat because you agree with me that this is pretty stupid. Yeah, no, this is not a trick question or a rhetorical question or anything. Matter of fact, it's not even a question worth even thinking about. Microsoft's wrong. Look, they cater to the security side of things, they cater to corporate America, but what about the enthusiast? What about somebody who's more likely to have project systems and tinker like I am? Do you really want a situation? So yeah, as it is right now, unless Microsoft has a change of heart, all of my systems are obsolete in 2025. No longer supported. Artificially obsolete. So all the fun ends. How about Germ Gaming and the Potato Masher? If that processor... How about all the people that are tinkering with retired Xeons as gaming PCs? Do you really want these enthusiasts out there? Like, let's see what this hardware combination can still do. Everybody who's in this enthusiast tinkering thing and whatnot, do you really want a situation where they're all using obsolete versions of Windows that won't get security updates anymore? You know, it's not like Windows XP vintage machines now where you just leave the thing offline all the time, you know, or look for security software that might still support XP and try and make up for the OS not having been patched in in the better part of 10 years. So, but that was one of the things too with Windows 10 versus Windows XP, that 2001, 20 years ago, was a different world with computers than 2021 is in terms of always connected and the way people use systems, even PC gaming. You got all this account-based stuff nowadays versus having to deal with CD DRM back in the 2000s. That's not something I miss. How about games for Windows Live? Double the DRM on certain Steam games in the 2000s before Games for Windows Live was retired. I actually got a free complimentary copy of Dirt 3 because the original one used Games for Windows Live. And the end of Games for Windows Live kind of screwed the game up a lot until a GFW free version was made. Same thing with Grand Theft Auto 4. Crippled by DRM for the longest time on PC. Only very, very recently has there finally been a post-2000s era DRM version of GTA 4 available on Steam. Yeah. But that's the thing. Microsoft fundamentally doesn't understand certain enthusiast PC gamers out there by doing this. And how about, say, you know, you can't afford something newer with the way things are and people selling stuff at probably inflated prices because the way graphics cards are. You have all of this going on. Actually, I think I got Dirt 3 as a graphics card bundle. And then when Dirt 3 was redone post DRM era, when it was redone, then I got it for free. So I guess it was cheap as dirt both times. I've gotten some of the newer dirt games since then. They're part of my backlog, and that's something I'm going to be doing on Twitch. Twitch.tv/MultimediaJay. Toss a follow. Matter of fact, has anybody followed since the last time I streamed Neverwinter Nights 2? With the recent updates to Elder Scrolls Online, I think I want to do ESO streams on YouTube, which has the highest bitrate support. Also, no needing to retranscode stuff like we do with Twitch streams that get sent over. Let's see. Stream Element Dashboard. Let's check it out. Become a streaming... Hey, look, Maya. Structure 5, thank you for the follow on Twitch. And you are the one that broke the silence. So one of the things I'm looking at doing as we approach this deadline of PC gaming and stuff, going through the backlog on Twitch, that might even be no camera streams even, where I'm just taking off the headset, running everything through the sound system, because I know that this thing, as well as the noise filters, I tested it once. It is directional enough and sensitive enough that I could probably take off the headset, shut the camera off, and just experience the game, similar to what Asmongold does on his secondary channel, Zach Roar, and get through the backlog that way, because we got the Steam Summer Sale going on right now, and the Steam Summer... I have games from like 2 or 3 Steam sales ago that I haven't played. So, that I haven't played yet, so I got a backlog to go through, so that's probably how it's going to split out. ESO has this wonderful eye candy now. I want to see how much of it translates on YouTube with the higher bitrate support, and then over on Twitch we'll do the backlog. Let's see, what do we have about the planned obsolescence, huh? 1600 third PC is Media Center and Gaming PC. Microsoft, you have to speed up the upgrade path. Well, that's the thing. I mean, Microsoft was trying to... When Windows 10 came out, Microsoft was... First, they were like, it's the last version of Windows, but they were also trying to have it scale down a lot more than Windows 7 used to do. Windows 7 got a little on the bloated side, and it was a little too PC specific. Windows 8 was kind of the prototype for what became Windows 10. Now, Windows 10 running on rubbish. The horrible little netbook with an old AMD APU circa 2012. Netbooks were made to be slow on purpose, as opposed to the ultrabooks of today. So, getting Windows 10 somewhat usable on the Windows 7 era netbook was an achievement. It was quite the accomplishment, if I do say so myself. It's a waste of an SSD because of how abysmally slow the system is. I believe I have tested this on like PC Bench or something like that, PC Mark or something like that. One of those multi-platform benchmarkers. I think this smartphone is faster than that netbook. In terms of its mathematical capabilities and stuff like that. I think there are smartphones that are better than that netbook, and I got Windows 10 working on it. So yeah. Yeah, Microsoft needs to quit being so stuffy. Maybe make it so that, a warning displays that your experience may not be optimal or there may be security issues if you install it, but don't artificially put something in that says it's not going to install Windows 11 because your processor isn't on the list. That's part of the fun of tinkering with computers for enthusiasts like myself, is seeing how far back we can go. It's okay that Windows 11 will not support 32-bit processors. I don't even think I still have a 32-bit only system anymore. I think the oldest processor I have is Athlon 64 from my 2005 system. So there's 64-bit support on just about all the systems I have nowadays. So yeah, getting rid of 32-bit processor support, not a bad thing. That way there is no 32-bit version anymore. It's not a problem that Microsoft requires this. It's not a problem that Microsoft has a hardware floor. It's a problem that it's a hard hardware floor, not a soft one. You should get a warning or something that says, yeah, it may not be optimal, maybe at risk for certain security issues and blah, blah. But if the software can run, let it run. Because right now, Windows 11 looks a lot more like a yacht club of an OS compared to Windows 10. Windows 10 was supposed to spread Windows out to more devices. It was supposed to run on more types of hardware. You were supposed to be able to scale it down, which is something Linux has been bragging about for an extremely long time. Windows 10 was supposed to do all that. Now we're going back in the other direction with Windows 11, where even, you know, this system, which does Elder Scrolls Online, 1080p 60 maximum settings, no issues except in crowded areas like Daggerfall. This computer is not worth running the latest version of Windows on. I have a hard time believing that. Let it sink in. Let it sink in. And how many people out there, I mean, there's one person mentioned that a Surface PC, actually no, there's an article that mentioned that there are certain very expensive Microsoft Surface PCs that won't be supported by this, that won't support Windows 11. You'll spend thousands of dollars. There's something out there in the Surface catalog you could buy right now that's not compatible. Yeah, Microsoft can't keep it this way. It's not what, you know, they're going back on what Windows 10 did. They're going to have a situation just like with Windows XP, where they're going to have to look at extending the support or something else, or something along those lines, or having a downgrade. Well, probably not a downgrade option anymore, but extending support, definitely. The downgrade option was due to some things with the software, and of course problems you could have with software not working in the new Vista environment. We don't have that now. We have Windows 10 to 11. It's not as big of a deal. Maybe there might be something with the Android support that might be an issue. 6-year-old mobile workstation can't run Windows 11. Surface Go 2 can get it, and that's only a Pentium Gold and 4 gigs of RAM. Yeah, so that's another thing too with PCs. People are trying to buy used hardware and keep it out of the junkyard, maybe even retired data center hardware, in order to play PC games on it and see, oh, how does a Xeon do as a gaming system? I'm not a fan of that because Intel Core is more power efficient than most stuff that's made for 24-hour operation. But I've looked at the numbers myself too, so. But there's people out there that want to see, can a Xeon play games? And how well? Everybody who has these kinds of questions is now getting a slap in the face from Windows 11. It needs to be at least Coffee Lake or whatever. It needs to be at least an $8 grand series Core or a $3 grand series Ryzen. So everything else, psh, nope. Hard stop. I hope they fix that up though. Modern Celeron is supported, but not a 6700K. Let me just go to that then. User benchmark. How about 6700K versus Celeron? What's the difference? Celeron G3930 versus i7 6700K. The 6700K was 63% faster, but that was a Kaby Lake era Celeron. Let me change that off. Let me change that off to whatever the most recent Celeron is. Core Ryzen, Core Ryzen, Core Ryzen, Core Ryzen, Core Ryzen. It's over on userbenchmark.com, by the way, if you folks want to try this out for yourself. Doo-da, 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 doo-da. Problem is, in order to stream the window, I'd have to maximize it, and it would absolutely light up the whole room. No dark mode on here. Celeron G5900. That's from what? That's Q2 2020. The i7 6700K is still, on average, 46% faster in terms of effective speed than the Celeron from Q2 of 2020. Which one supports Windows 11? Of course, the Celeron. Yeah, that's pretty pitiful. Let's go through the rest of what people are saying here. If Microsoft doesn't relax these requirements, so I'm staying on 10. You're staying on 10 until you have an obsolete OS, and then you're a security risk. And it's not going to be as good as, like, say, maybe making a vintage XP machine nowadays, where doing more things offline was more of a thing in those days. Same with Windows 7 as well. There are actually people that are making retro Windows 7 era gaming PCs, trying to make like their dream system from the Windows 7 era with a Windows 7 installation. So it's out there. People are doing that kind of stuff. But Windows 10 was made for the internet world. It was made for a world where computers and mobile have a lot more crosstalk with each other. So I don't know if I don't think a completely offline Win 10 machine would work. So what do you do, especially if the computer's not all that bad? Well, you know, when it's Windows 10 only and it's 2026. Microsoft wants us to buy a new PC. Yeah, they've done this before and it hasn't worked out well for them. Windows 8 in particular, if Windows isn't interesting, it actually tanks hardware sales. Windows 8 did that. 775 system with E8400, 3 gigs DDR2. Search some videos on YouTube, some files need replacement, etc. I'm sure someone will find some way to install it. Or Microsoft could just make it easier and put in a warning if you're not on the processor list instead of some kind of hard stop. I hope they do that. We still have some time. I think we still have some time before this. I mean, Windows 10 did change leading up to launch and stuff like that. So I saw it myself in 2015. Need UEFI. Didn't know legacy boot would not be supported when I installed 10. Yeah, neither did I. I played catch up on some of the security stuff too, because my old system was from 2010 and didn't support it. So 1600 on my third PC is the media center gaming PC. Thanks, Microsoft. You have to speed up the upgrade path. Thanks, Microsoft. Yeah, modern Celeron is supported, but not a 6700K. Yep. So whichever processor is the next Sandy Bridge, where it stays relevant for a long time because of the pure hardware power that was packed in back in those days. So all these chips now, yep, you can't use them in Windows 11. I don't think that's going to last. I don't think Microsoft is going to keep doing this. Just like what happened with the backlash after the Xbox One Betamax player version. Now, when Sony made fun of them, here's how you share a game. Here's the game. Thank you. There's got to be a moment like that. So when is Windows 11 supposed to come out? I suppose I should actually start looking up some things about this. So here's how I'm going to, catch up on everyone else's opinions about Windows 11. First, I'm going to watch the reveal. So one of these nights, I'm playing through ESO right now, and I'm having all my characters unlock the companions. I've only got about 2 left, I think, out of my maxed out account of 18 characters. So I've been just doing that with something playing in the background. So I'm going to go through the reveal presentation while goofing around in ESO on the big screen. Why you need to start... Forbes, why you need to start worrying about Microsoft Windows 11 now. Let's mute this in case it makes noise. See. Well, let's get to it afterwards. So the plan is, I watch the reveal presentation and then I look at everyone else's commentaries. I don't want any biases because of other people's opinions. I want to form my own opinions directly. It was the same thing too with AMD stuff when Lisa Su gives speeches for AMD. I'll watch those directly instead of someone else's opinions. I'll watch a summary, but I won't watch a commentary. Has there been times when people have been really upset and then their opinions become other people's opinions and then people don't form their own opinions because of this? Let's look at this Forbes article. Why you need to start worrying about Windows 11 now. Let's see. Seem fairly innocuous. Yeah, I like the UI, especially the dark mode wallpaper. Windows 11 promises to do a lot more for Microsoft customers than what they get from Windows 10. If they're bringing over gaming enhancements that work now with Xbox, I would like that a lot. Anything that helps gaming out. But the artificial obsolescence on the hardware side of things that makes perfectly good gaming PCs not usable, no thanks. Resume what you're doing following an interruption, leaving shutting down the computer. I think Macs did that a long time ago. There's always some things in new Windows stuff that Macs were doing 10 years ago. It will allow sessions to pick up on a different computer. Oh, more cloud stuff. What's that going to do to bandwidth in terms of people with bandwidth caps? Windows will adjust if you have a computer with a removable tablet screen. So if you have a PC version of a Wii U, woohoo, or a Nintendo Switch. New UI. Yeah, I like the new UI and all the new snapping patterns that are available. So the 4 corners thing was cool in Windows 10, but some of the other cool stuff that's available is kind of nice. Zoom meetings, stuff that's inspired by the pandemic. Your existing computers may not work with it. You only work on 64-bit computers. That's been a thing for a long time. UEFI, already have that, which has replaced the BIOS on newer computers. Must be capable of supporting secure boot. Already have that. So the big issue is the trusted platform module thing. Version 2. Whoa, bug got in because of a crack near the air conditioner. Whoops. Yeah, and this is where corporate America is going to flip out. Because many of them may have just gone to all the trouble to upgrade to Windows 10, and now they got to go to Windows 11 in a couple of years. They may be saying goodbye to, like, you know, Core i5. Well, no, actually, the ones... I think the little, the net tops that the 9to5ers upgraded to will support Windows 11 if they have the TPM module in them. So that's the big thing. The processors are new enough, but the motherboard, I think, might be the catch. You know, usually performance is the issue with computers, but now it might be a snafu on your motherboard. Kind of a world that we wandered into. You can run an app from Microsoft, yep, and I was very disappointed when I saw that Monolith is not compatible. Main system, not compatible. Can't test the OS out on a secondary system because the main system's not good enough. Windows 10 will be supported until 2025. Yeah, well... Let's look at this, see here. Optiplex 990, the Dellosaurus, was released when? Well, let's look at when the Sandy Bridge was released. The Core i7-2600 released when? 2011? 2010, actually. Supports LGA 1155. So yeah, the Core i7-2600, the processor that powers the new Dellosaurus, or well, Sandy Bridge Dellosaurus. 2010, so a 10-year-old system. That 10-year-old system can still game at 1080p. Matter of fact, did the experiment where I rewired the case because it was hard to jam the 1060 in there, and it wasn't that bad of an experience. I actually want to upgrade the network in the house so that way we can have more reliable network connections for everything and faster network connections, not using wireless all the time. So I want to have something set up to where it's a bit easier to work in the project area and have systems going all the time that I can compare Monolith to. But yeah, 2010 for the 2600. So you can buy these $250 Optiplexes out there. You know, just get a graphics card or have a graphics card somewhere. Get a graphics card whatever you can, maybe a 1050 Ti or something. Actually, what's the price on those these days with the shortages? Probably too high. Should be a $150 card. I'll bet it's at least $250. 1050 Ti. That if you do 1050 though, you're gaming in 1080p. You're not going to want to try in 4K with that kind of stuff. 263, yeah, about $100 premium on a 1050 Ti. Gigabyte, $250. MSI, $389 for a 4 gig card. That's disgusting. Yeah. The EVGA, is the EVGA, where's the EVGA one? I don't know. Let's see. What's the cheapest? Lowest price without going to wish.com or something like that. 4 gig, yeah, $250 is a price floor for a 1050 Ti. So you're going to get ripped off $100 or so. You're going to get ripped off $100 or so, but the fun part is this gigabyte card that's $249.90. Well, you got to watch the length, though. You might want to get one with only one fan. Yeah, let's stick with that. Let's go with the gigabyte that only has one fan for a whole $257. That'll get you 1080p, medium-ish gaming. And that is... single fan cooler, so it'll fit in the Dellosaurus box better. I don't think there's additional power on the 1050 Ti. Yeah. Yeah, so $250 for a 1050 Ti. Ugh. Try overclocking? I don't know. Is the EVGA one available? Or is that one of the shortaged cards? Yeah, the 1050 Ti full-size one is there for $300 something, but the 4 gig one, oh, it's used only. Never mind. Yeah, so $300 because it's $300 because it's being resold. Yeah. Okay, so $250 for a 1050 Ti with this crap market right now. So you do that. Give me some numbers here. Windows 10 can be used without registering it. You just have a watermark. $250 for a Dellosaurus and a $250 gets you to $500, the cost of a Series X. So But can you get a Series X for $500 though? I know some people that are bragging about how they got a Series X, but what did they pay for it? So you've hit the MSRP, but you have a PC instead. Yeah, $1,200 for a 1 terabyte Xbox Series X. Why? Amazon Prime too, sold by a third party. How'd I guess? Gouge, 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 gouge. How is it? You wonder why gaming these days is about running what you have into the ground. Some of this is the pandemic too. The semiconductor industry has the agility of a pregnant moose, as I like to say. It's not very agile. It's not the sort of thing that can speed up, slow down at the drop of a hat. Well, speed up anyways. So it's going to take a while for the semiconductor industry to get back up to full speed now that we're coming back in certain areas from the pandemic. And that assumes, oh, wait a minute. The $250 GTX 1050 Ti ships from Hong Kong. Uh-oh. Is this some kind of third-party listing for something that might be like the stuff on Wish.com or something? Let's go to Amazon instead. 1050 Ti. What are we looking at there? Paladin. What kind of a brand is that? EVGA 1-star. Asus Phoenix Fan Edition. $332. Yeah, might want to check and make sure that the card you get is not a ripoff if you get that $250 gigabyte one that ships from Hong Kong. I don't want a situation like Wish.com GPUs. There's a Zotac that's out there, but everything that's on Amazon is like 300 something. Did you mean 1050 Ti? Yes. Show me the darn card. It's not as filterable. What kind of price floor does Amazon? Oh, no, I've got accessories for the 1050 Ti. I want the card. There's a no-name brand. There's Quadra. This is one of the reasons why Newegg still gets business. If you try and use Amazon like Newegg, it doesn't work. I sort by price for 1050 Ti, and I get all the accessories like replacement fans at the bottom. Give me a break. All right, so maybe you get the Asus Cerberus 1050 Ti 4GB GDDR5. Is there one that's sold and shipped by Newegg or something? Or maybe it ships from Hong Kong because, yeah, this one's sold by a third party. Maybe it ships from Hong Kong because it is, the order's going straight to the manufacturer because of the strained supply chain. That could be the case. How about sold by Newegg? $300 for a GTX 1050 Ti from MSI, and it has 2 fans. We got to watch the length on that to get it to work in a Dellosaurus. So now you're talking $550 for a Dellosaurus. That's a bit much. Because the graphics card, of course. And it's not even that great of a graphics card. It's 1050. It's like, what was it the 1660 that was the successor, the no power successor? Newegg. Was it the 1660 that was the no power successor to this? How about 1660? C. Needs to be something short though. It can't be too long because of the case it would go into. Yeah, we got no name brands. I'm not going to trust those. $300 something for Gainward. Haven't seen that name in years. I didn't know they were still around. What's next? Albatron Medusa? Yeah. There's an MSI one for $500. Okay, you'll skip that. So you can get into PC gaming at the 1080 level, but the odds are, well, it's just not going to be worth it. And this is the reason why I'm not building. Probably pay like that on a motherboard too, so what a mess. But all of this, by the way, would be completely rendered irrelevant by the planned obsolescence of Windows 11. Yeah, you can build a system. You can get into PC gaming. Not going to matter when your whole system is rendered obsolete and you can't get updates for your OS anymore. So yeah, Microsoft. Learn about the enthusiasts in your customer base. It's not just companies that are buying Windows licenses. There will be unintended consequences galore if the current setup goes to retail. So we'll just have to see how that changes. let me just see if there's anything going on that I might have missed. Windows 11 compatible processors. Look for news articles on that. News. Your CPU might not be officially supported. The thing is, Intel, AMD, and Qualcomm yeah. 11 may not run on early Ryzen, Threadripper, Skylake X, or pre-2016 Intel PCs. Yeah. We'll try and get it running on the Delosaurus anyways. Microsoft explains why you'll need TPM for Win 11. Microsoft is prioritizing security over the PC's tradition of lifelong hardware support. You know, there's a thing. There's options available. If you need something more, if you need something secure to do all your other stuff on, and just use a PC for gaming, then what? Let's see. It's because of the growing level of cybercrime, including phishing and ransomware. So yeah, it is a security thing. If you have a system though that you could with cloud saves, you could just blow it away. You know, if you ever got ransomware on it. Yeah, Microsoft has helped push the PC platform forward from 2019's secured core PCs, which added hardware and firmware with virtualization, etc. Yes, the TPMs are about security, at least until someone defeats them. More sophisticated attacks from nation states. So it's a security thing. I suppose, you know, makes sense and whatnot, but what do you want to do with all the old stuff? That's the thing. You integrate into the motherboard or added separately into the CPU. Yeah, I would build it when the shortages are over. Hopefully they're over before Windows 10 goes end of life. When the shortages were over, I'd be glad to build a new system. You know, there'll probably be some kind of Core i or Ryzen that is substantially better than the 6700K I have right now that would be worth putting into a system, and Fractal has a case that I want to get with the Define 7XL. So, I'd really like to build a new system. Once these shortages are over, though, and I don't get as ripped off as I would right now. Also, I want to take some more time to keep an eye on what's going on with AMD. Are they going to switch over to socket AM5 anytime soon? You know, building a Ryzen system on the new socket would be cool if we know that AMD keeps sockets around for years afterwards. That's the other wild card. In a sense, if anybody remembers the monolith dilemma, the discussions I had about building monolith back in the 2010s. This is a new monolith dilemma all over again. Because now we're at a situation where I'm talking about what's coming out hardware-wise, and I'm thinking about what's going on with the system. Yeah, and when do I want to make the move? Or do I want to go Intel Core again? Because Intel is fired back at AMD very, very well. But AMD has stronger marketing right now. But it's not just about the marketing or about who's the better performer, it's also about total cost of ownership. So AMD has taken a socket AM4 and made it last 5 years. Intel doesn't have that kind of a reputation. So, and what that does is it changes the way you think about computer upgrades, because the CPU is now something you can think about upgrading. Also, if you don't have a lot of money, you get in at some mid-level CPU and then move up to whatever the good one is later on. You know, if a good one comes out that makes you want to, you know, upgrade and stuff. So previously, it'd be a guts upgrade like I mentioned earlier, where everything's linked together, the main components of the system, they all have to go at once. Then you got to figure out what to do with all the old stuff. Sell it, put it in another system, have a secondary on hand. So Ryzen versus Intel Core right now represents different ways of thinking about hardware, and the sockets are part of that. The RAM support is part of that. The motherboard features are part of that as well. But it could also be the case that it's a bit of a gimmick. I mean, how many BIOS updates have Ryzen motherboard manufacturers really made other than, oh, you can run newer processors on here? Yeah, well, you run newer processors on Ryzen motherboards, but when you start hitting diminishing returns because maybe the PCI Express or the bus throughput or something for your SSDs isn't as up to snuff, or there's some kind of bus that doesn't run at the faster speed that newer motherboards run at. So when are you going to run into something besides whether or not your processor works that holds you back? So it's just a dilemma. It's just something to think about. And when the system I have right now is perfectly fine until I want to move beyond 1080p, I'm not really that inclined to really do much with it. And of course, the graphics card shortage is, if it is resolved, is something I could try first before moving up to a processor to run 4K with. So if the graphics card shortage was resolved by the time I'm getting a 4K TV or something, and I don't want to keep having to try and upscale 1080 to 4K, if I set something like that up, then we're talking about that whole situation right there. But I could actually try a graphics card and see when the CPU finally starts falling behind because it's finally at its limit. And I know I'm not there yet. I have a one computer streaming setup right now for ESO running. Previously I ran at a hybrid setup, but now I'm going to see if it runs at max for streams on YouTube. We'll see how that goes. Do some backlog streams over on Twitch of some of the other games like Neverwinter Nights 2. As well as some of the stuff from the Steam sales I never got around to playing. That'd be pretty cool as well. So, yeah, it's a lot to think about. And all of it has a curveball thrown in it because of this planned obsolescence now that we know about. I don't think Microsoft will stick with it. I think the backlash will get them to change something. Yeah, it'll just be maybe you get a security warning or something like that. You should not be stopped from putting games on an old computer, though, especially if that machine is going to be used for gaming only. You shouldn't be stopped from tinkering with old computers for PC gaming and seeing how long they stay relevant because of Windows 11 or any current version of Windows. We'll see how it all shakes out. 4:30 at the Geek House, just about, and I'm going to call it a morning a little early. Got some other things we can be working on, too. Some folks stopped by tonight. Some folks chatted. This is where I'm going to just cool it right here and let this issue rest. MultimediaJay.wordpress.com. Check out the blog entry for my points as well with regards to the other stuff, as well as embedded videos and things along those lines. Also, twitch.tv/MultimediaJay for game streams. Twitch, because of its limitations, isn't something I do for a lot of other stuff besides generic game streaming. So, but if that changed, who knows? Windows 11. I couldn't wait to start using Windows 10 when the preview editions came out. But if Windows 11's preview editions are not going to work on older hardware, so I can't do a Windows 11 versus the Dellosaurus type video, I am in no rush to start using Windows 11. Matter of fact, I'm going to have a mess on my hands because this Skylake system is still going to be perfectly fine, but it's going to fall into that hole between supports Windows 11 and, you know, it's not like I'm getting rid of an old 10-year-old system like the Dellosaurus if I had to junk the current monolith system. So, yeah. Microsoft. Sometimes they get a little out of touch. Till next time, this is Multimedia Jay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.